Okay, we'll make a start there. So, welcome everybody. I'm looking around the room, and I think everybody here knows the drill pretty well for how these meetings are. So, I won't do any of the usual reminders for this place scrutiny meeting. We'll move on to apologies for absence. Seem to have a full house here, so nothing to go there. So. Second one is declarations of interest. Does anyone have anything to declare this time? No. Yeah,
Chair, thank you. So I'm on the board for Your Waste as a council non-exec director. I have asked the monitoring officer if that would stop me from taking part in this meeting, and he's advised no, and you've been privy to that communication too.
Yeah, great. Thanks for raising that one. Item 3 is the minutes. Does anyone want to raise on the minutes from last meeting? I'm not seeing anything, so I'll take those as approved. We've got public participation, item 4. We've got 2 speakers tonight. The first speaker is Flick Williams, who's joining us remotely. And I believe you're in the waiting room already, Flick. Do you want to start when you're happy? And you've got 3 minutes as always. Thanks.
I wish to raise some issues regarding both place and transport under the remit of this committee. The history of the Station Gateway project was that community groups were, after intense lobbying, permitted to be involved at the 11th hour. We were highly restricted in what we could alter, but nonetheless made significant improvement, such as relocating bus shelters from the curbside that would interfere with deployment of bus ramps. Following this, we were assured we would be invited to comment on future schemes at an earlier stage. This has not happened with the first stages of York Central. The road and Hudson Boulevard opened without any input from disabled people. The bus stops do not all have shelters, possibly because the 2 floating bus stops created have insufficient room on them for bus ramp, wheelchair turning circle and shelter. Those that do have shelters and real-time information lack push buttons for audio information. How is it that we are retrofitting existing bus stops in the city to a certain standard, yet install brand new ones without? We keep hearing how bus stops are the welcome mat to the whole bus network. With the Bus Enhanced Partnership having suspended all meetings, as the disability rep on it, I have absolutely nowhere else to raise these concerns other than here. Staying with buses, East Yorkshire have just purchased 4 new double-deckers for the X45 route to Hull. And do they have 2 wheelchair spaces? Of course they don't. Apparently, replacement buses had to be bought quickly off the peg, but I should be reassured by the fact it remains the policy of Owners Go Ahead Group to buy buses with 2. Strangely, I'm not remotely reassured, and I guess neither are the wheelchair-using sisters who live to the east of York, who when they travel for a day out in our city must travel an hour apart and one wait around for the other. It's what's known as the administrative model of disability. Decisions are made by non-disabled people unaffected by them and who fail to comprehend the indirect discrimination caused as a result. The shorthand for this is ableism. Returning to York Central, plenty of seating has been provided, yes, but it does not meet the inclusive seating standard that this authority paid good money to Access Consultants MEMA to develop in conjunction with disabled people. It's my understanding that the access officer shared the document with York Central partners, heard nothing, and the seating was installed. It doesn't meet the criteria for materials, armrests, or wheelchair transfer space. It is in fact a triumph of form over function in order to meet someone's brief of reflecting railway heritage. The fact that many will not be able to use it easily or indeed at all because it looks like railway sleepers is just fine then. More administrative model ableism, not inclusion. Sadly, nothing changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Flick. I said some of that won't be included, discussed at tonight's meeting, but it's really helpful information to have, and I'll have a look at how we can pick that up outside of this and at future committees. So thanks for your time. Second speaker is Miss Gwen Swinburne. Gwen, if you come forward, and you know the score, so just start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, members. I raise urgent concerns about the council's park scoring system, which unjustly ignores King George's Field, locally known as Doddy Park. This 4.5-acre site, established by legal deed as a memorial to King George V, is dedicated in perpetuity for public recreation. The council has a statutory duty to maintain it. Yet Doddy Park, the only recreational space for deprived communities across the Groves, Bell Farm, Doddy Avenue and Pottery Lane, has seen no meaningful investment for decades. Its facilities are dire, listen to this: 2 seats, 2 rugby posts on an unplayable ground, a basketball hoop and a mud trail. The equally inaccessible Arran Park play area with sparse equipment back from 2009, all sitting in mud, further highlights this neglect. The council's flawed scoring system ranks Doddy Park as the lowest priority, misrepresenting it as serving 1 ward when it serves 2. It is unfairly penalised by 60 points for infrastructure when it deserved the absolute maximum score. It is entirely inaccessible. You have to go down steps. Meanwhile, Hull Road Park is to receive multiple funding allocations. Our communities could only dream of such a park. Worse, council reports and even the website failed to acknowledge King George's Field's even existence, referring only to the Arran Place play area, as if the recreation area doesn't exist at all. Staff declined to set the record straight, but will you? Penalising parks not in contention for green flag status further disadvantages neglected spaces like Doddy Park and unfairly favours chosen parks in chosen wards. A fair scoring system would rank this park 5th. Any councillor visiting would, I am sure, agree, perhaps asking why it isn't top of the list. Instead, the current system awards 1 park 5 separate allocations, each boosted by 100 green flag points. That's completely wrong. This isn't the fairness I expect from Labour. Chair, the current system fails deprived communities, or rather some deprived communities, and betrays the council's legal and moral obligations to King George's Field and our communities. I request you recommend revising the green flag bonus scoring criteria and request separate scoring for the invisible King George's Field as a recreation space and Arran Place as a play park, as has been done for Hull Road multiple times. Surely our communities deserve equitable treatment. Finally, Chair, just a quickie on a few months ago, I raised the issue of having a scrutiny on the council's commercial property. I was going to speak on it tonight, but I'll send everybody a note about it if that's okay. I know it's on the agenda, the floor plan.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for your time. We'll take that into account. Okay. Oh, sorry. Losing track of. Okay, so we'll move on to the first substantive item, which is the Parks Investment Fund. I'll ask officers to come forward. If you just want to introduce yourself when you're ready and give any overview that you want to before we have questions, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Hi, Ian Holt, Head of Environmental Services. So here today to ask for comment on the Parks Investment Fund second paper. Earlier in the year, we brought to scrutiny and then onto executive a criteria report and asked for comment on that. This is the follow-on report, scrutiny report, to comment on how the officers have applied the criteria and what schemes have qualified in terms of the meeting the criteria. Overall, along with the capital investment and the third-party funding, this is a programme close to 750k with other committed Section 106 money that will hopefully overall take the budget going forward to circa 925k. Again, we've asked for opinions on comments on the weighted details in paragraphs 8 to 10 and any suggested alternative weighting. As previously discussed in earlier reports, the criteria is around sites with higher IMD, replacing equipment based on age, key infrastructure, and equal weighting to Green Flag Award and availability of external funds. The report outlines, along with the annexes, the the schemes that have met the criteria and listed again for comment across all the wards within York.
Thank you. I'll open up for questions in a second. I just want to say, so obviously we've had this report not too long ago in terms of discussing the broad criteria. So I guess I'd ask people not to go all the way back to fundamentals in terms of what we're going to, but in terms of, I guess, in terms of there is still importance in terms of how it's weighted. So happy to have an open discussion. I don't want to take it too far back to first fundamentals of how it works initially, I guess is the question. So Councillor Fenton, if you want to go first, please.
Thank you, and I won't rerun the discussion we had previously. Thanks for the report. I just wondered if you could just clarify paragraph 8, key infrastructure, just unpack what that means. I think I understand what it means, but if you can just explain that in a bit more detail, please. And also, if you can talk a bit about pooled Section 106. So when schemes come to planning, there's normally an identified contribution for an identifiable location. So it'd be helpful if you could unpack that a bit more in terms of where the pooled Section 106 comes from and how that's identified in terms of, is it 106 contributions that can be used for anything, or is it pooled for play and open space, and is it restricted by geography? It'd be helpful just to understand the split between pooled and sort of specific. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Dave Mee, Operations Manager within Public Realm, sort of one of the authors of the report, and done a lot of the number crunching you've seen in the annexes. The infrastructure is and looking at this, I can understand why you asked the question. And I think that there's a general comment, obviously we'll take things away from this meeting to fine tune the paper they're going to the executive. So things like footpaths is a primary infrastructure issue, and to some degree safety surfacing around play equipment. So it's generally the access to and what you find when you get there. That also includes like boundary fencing in some instances. So I'll update this to include those examples if that's all right. In terms of the Section 106, those last time we were here, I was minded with Patrick Looker. So Patrick and myself have gone through most of the Section 106. There's still a little bit of work still to do, agreements, and check the wording of them. And to my surprise, I was of more your inclination as offended. Most Section 106s are site specific or very quite geographically specific. A couple of them are just as for the benefit of York, effectively. So it's not what I was expecting. I thought it would be more site specific. And again, being just dealing with your area, we know there's one where it is, a particular site is named. And that has been my general understanding over the years, that it's generally very site specific. But in a few instances, we've got some that are really for the benefit of York citizens. And that's been validated by, Patrick.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks again, Dave, for coming along to Fishergate. last Friday, where we had a consultation session about the improvements we can make to Cemetery Road Park. The context there is that we'd already provided ward funding for improvements of Cemetery Road Park. And upon sort of further examination and the adjustments made in this review demonstrated there was also room for investment in Cemetery Road Park from this sort of central fund as well. Just wondering if there were any further considerations and things we can learn from that, where local councillors have provided ward funding and the role that ward funding might be able to play in enhancing improvements, and whether it'd be worth engaging with ward councillors in this area to sort of perhaps even bulk up some of the money that might be provided for the park improvements.
Okay, two questions there. There's a commitment, and it goes picking up on some of the themes that have been said before. There's a commitment in here, I can't find the paragraph, but we will work with people like David Smith, our access officer, people like Greg Morgan, Sustainable Transport have been in touch, Public Health have been in touch. There's a lot of internal colleagues that are not just interested, want to be involved in making sure what we deliver meets, our other standards and aspirations. Your Cemetery Road at Fishergate was slightly odd because you'd earmarked last year an aspiration to do things. Now other councillors have given money toward play areas over the years on numerous occasions. Once we've been through the exec, the plan is to go to those wards that are going to be beneficiaries to double check and first check in some instances that what happened is what's required, and give you the opportunity, if you wish to or they wish to top up. So I would, the more money you have, the more you can get. It's you're blunt about it. So to just conclude then, yes, we would talk to ward councillors. Yes, there's the opportunity for additional top ups. Some of these schemes will go forward. Will not come forward until next year. So in terms of like Micklegate councillors, I'm not proposing there's two schemes recommended for Roundtree Park. I'm not proposing to do those until April onwards, 26, because of flood risk over the winter. We don't do construction work in Roundtree Park until then. We do the preparation, but if the councillors wanted to add added value, that could be actually from next year's budget rather than this year's budget, or in your case, to roll money forward. I know you don't.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the paper officers and Councillor Kent. This is generally good to see, I think. I have three questions, Chair, but I'll try and fly through them. First one is a clarity point, and I'm sorry if I've missed this in the previous meeting that I couldn't make, but the extra staff costs, the 85k, is that for additional staff to effectively help you out, because you're not famously doing a hell of a lot, if you don't mind me saying.
Thank you. It's not to help me out, it's to replace me in this project.
Okay.
This will be their project to deliver, and I will help them to deliver the project.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
It's fixed term for like 18 months to the, which I don't want to come back and say I got it wrong, but I'm confident we can deliver this in that time period.
Okay. Cool. And then my other two questions. One's about the green flag aspect. And I know I'm guessing you'll have been over this numerous times, but giving it that weighting, is there not a danger that might sort of, I don't know if lockout is too strong a word, but keep certain parks out from ever getting high enough in future cycles? There are some parks that will never be a green flag park because they're just tiny, but they're still quite nice and important to the people that live around them.
Green, it's best to reverse it round. The recommendation from this group and the executive was that green flag, it was like an equal fourth weight with third-party contributions. So the scoring reflects the direction of from the here and the executive.
Mm-hmm.
Now the green flag is applicable to a multitude of sites. It's not necessarily size. You can have a small, like Glen Gardens is small, you can have a green flag. You need a certain degree of key assets to give it status. So it's more the existence of the site as they are now that would be the driver.
Mm.
Now, if you want, so for example, you know, it does weight sites certainly, because that was the recommendation.
Yeah.
But if we can change scores. If we lower the weight of green flag, then you need to lower the weight of third-party funding, because that was the recommendation from here and the exec was that was fourth in the weighting and of equal weight to each other.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in a way, this sort of ties into my final question, which is, I think, where I'm going with it. And forgive me, I was on holiday for the previous time you came to this committee. A rare chance for a break. Anyway, I think what I'm getting at is maybe it's been dealt with elsewhere, but I can't see it in this paper, a mechanism to make sure that there is, whilst we're rightly prioritising parks, ensuring that there is sufficient churn so that eventually all parks climb up that list. Because yes, you might replace play equipment that's over 20 years old or whatever, but the park still remains in a certain area of deprivation. So, but there's going to have to be, I'm guessing there's something in place to say, well, they got sorted out last year, so they go to the back of the queue. Sorry if that's.
Well, that's to be fair, that's how we've been operating probably for the last 25 years.
But probably informally, if is that fair to say?
No.
So, for instance, for Sowerby Road Park, you know, we in Holgate Wood, we all knew that it hadn't been done for a while, but there was nothing really written down anywhere to say it's now due.
Yeah.
We just went off a feeling and residents' anecdotes.
Yeah. So there has never been a formal parks investment strategy. From multiple, there's never been one, you know, full stop, since the authority was formed. And by default, you know, if the bottom sites got refreshed, or some of the gaps in provision were replaced under the Play Builder Initiative 2010-2011. So that dealt with a lot of the worst for parks, but didn't. Therefore, you then that sorts them out for 20 years, and then in 20 years' time, the whole model does not allow for reinvestment in 20 years' time. Other sites have been beneficiaries of Section 106 and other local funding to address them at various times. But there's never been a formal investment strategy to future plan what is needed, which is why, in a way, this fund is so welcome, because it's addressing some of the things that have been kicking around for a long time.
Yeah. Thank you. If I could just come back on the green flag weighting, the reason that was in there is because it was an ambition in the council plan was to increase the number of green flag parks in the city. So that was part of the core commitment of this administration. So that's why it features. But of course, that doesn't mean that all the little spaces which are never going to be green flags aren't important. And I think that and it's a lower weighting, so there are all sorts of other things. Areas of deprivation comes first. But once this fund has been spent, at that point we've got the very helpful information compiled, but then we're actually dependent on new funding or future funding, and whoever is in charge at that point, or whatever Scrutiny advises in terms of overall long-term strategies, that can be changed. This was a weighting for this fund to be spent at this point in time, and of course that will remove all the top however many 15 schemes, because they'll have been dealt with under that. That will boost their, so that means next time round all the other parks which haven't been can be looked at, or with different criteria, different weightings. I mean, that's this is for a sort of this fund only, I guess, with this weighting, if that helps.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess the play equipment score and everything will reset at the stage that it's done. Councillor Bassey.
Thank you, Chair. So, am I right in thinking that all the parks that have been weighed up and looked at here are council parks and spaces? Is there a list of all the play areas and parks across the city? And I ask, for example, when a new housing development gets approved and part of approval is that there should be a play area. I think I'm not suggesting this was a perfect solution either, but in the past, ward committee funding was such that community groups could apply directly for some funding to help them improve a particular facility in a ward. It looks like that isn't part of where we are at the moment. Going forwards, would it be your intention for there to be a list of all play areas across York so that we could look at everything in the balance in a different way, possibly?
The first answer is the first question. So is there a list of sites? Yes, we have a list of sites. Those play areas are on the council's website. So it's a spin-off of this exercise that we've always had on the council's website, the principal green spaces and all known play areas. This exercise flushed out though that I was wrong in that last bit, that some of the newer play areas were missing from the database. But each site should now be on the site, on the council's website, down to the newest ones from new developments. So the old civil services sports ground on Shipton Road, that should now be on here. So the number of play areas has gone up by about 15 that were missing off the website. It's never been, as far as I understand, we're never meant to provide an encyclopedia of everything you can find in the city on our council website. So it's just stayed at the principal parks. So Homestead Park will be on the Dean's Park as major green spaces. Where we go after this finished, I don't know. You know, it's for, I'll put that back to you guys, and where the executive wants to take it to make it a wider programme, or, you know, phase 2 of council only programme. I don't know. I can't answer that.
Second question. Yeah, fine.
It's a second question, really, Chair. So in terms of the questions that were asked earlier about key infrastructure, one of the issues that I've not heard mentioned, but maybe you are already looking at it, there is discussion about access for health and well-being and sport also being linked to perceptions of safety. So when we're looking at key infrastructure, the presence of hedges and things like that, so that girls can feel safe about going to a play area, for example. Does that form part of what you're looking at when you're looking at key infrastructure, and if not, can it be included?
It's not. No. So the short answer is that is not one aspect I've looking at. However, it's something we've been mindful of for probably 15 years. Now, I've probably taken more hedging out than I have planted in my career, which is probably not something normally people shout about. We've got representatives from Hull Road Park. You know, that used to have an 8-foot high privet hedge all around it, and it said keep out. It didn't say come in. That's what went. The hedge around Clarence Gardens got reduced, and has been greatly reduced in Guildhall to open up sightlines. I'm currently working on Hull Road Park to open up more sightlines across and through the park. It's an element of a green flag criteria assessment. So it's the flip side is obviously people like vegetation and want to see trees and want to see shrubs. So it's the right place, right time. Some of these schemes will have the opportunity, for revising the landscape, new landscape. So again, we need to be mindful of that in so doing, that we don't then put something new in and then hide it.
Yeah, okay, I make the point, you know, I think we all want to see vegetation and hedges and everything else, but it's in the balance also thinking about how comfortable people will feel in those spaces. So going forwards, I'd like to see that factored in.
Councillor Kenny, would you come in on this?
Just to thank Councillor Vassie for that. And I know in conversations that we've had that is very much part of the thinking. One of the schemes in Bell Farm, which would be under discussion, but part of that was whether a change in the landscaping would make the area feel safe and maybe less prone to ASB. But also we have had conversations, and I know some of the place committee or place chair, whatever the correct term is, have had an email from Make Space for Girls, and we've spoken to Abigail, who runs that in some detail, and are very aware of those concerns around making all demographics, including girls, welcome. And I hope that will be part of all our thinking. I think it is already, but all our thinking going forward for all our public spaces.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was just about to raise that. So kind of supplementary, I guess. when it comes to the design of parks, once we get to the next stage and you're looking at how the money's spent for each one, do we have a kind of, in housing, we had a design manual that kind of set out what we think is good, what makes a good park and what makes a bad park. And I guess that'll be some of what goes into this job scope for who you appoint as the project manager, because it's kind of key to what kind of schemes they'll put together. I guess how do we engage with groups like that as they come through for each one to kind of make sure we're putting in the right stuff to make it the right scheme, I guess, at that time?
Twofold approach. I mean, historically, we've talked to the local users or likely users in designing the scheme. And then we go to the industry and ask them to respond to that. The refinement of that now is we have the council's access officer in post. And Flick, who obviously spoke earlier, has sent me, a design guide information. So there's more, the industry's moved on. But they start very much with the existing users. So it's the opposite way actually to having a design guide which says you must have one particular roundabout or one particular set of swings. It responds to more local subtleties. For example, we're currently out to tender for a scheme in Glen Gardens, which is ahead of this and separate project. And there we've actually got a hill, inverted commas, to play with, because it's one of the few play areas in York beside Acomb Green that's actually got a bit of height. And that'll produce something very different than we'll see Councillor Myers have been working with in Crombie Avenue. So it's more a local response first rather than a template.
Thanks, that's really helpful to hear. I think Councillor Healy next.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I'm very glad to see something where you can actually follow the reasoning behind a choice, as it's not something that I think we see very often in the council. So I applaud you for that. And hopefully other executive members will travel down a similar path that we see here. So diving into the schemes and picking up the point that Councillor Taylor made tangentially around the green flag score. Because the IMD score is so high, has a multiplier of 4, if a park has a high multiplier, like Hull Road, for instance, it seems to get a lot of bites at the cherry. So Hull Road, for instance, I think out of the 25 schemes, 5 of them are in Hull Road, which the design of this, okay, that's how it's come out. So the IMD score might be almost too high, too heavy. Also, because the IMD score is such a major part of the scoring, I think if you add up the, 4, 3, 2, what's that, 5, 9, 10, 11, it's almost half the overall score. There's literally nothing outside the ring road at all. Now, there's already a feeling or complaints, I'd say, that the city council seems to be the city, not what's outside the ring road. Now, on this, I can't see how you would change it unless you were to say, well, if you've got a scheme, then that's it. You get one thing done as opposed to multiple things. So that's a question, I suppose. Very specifically on the Roundtree's Park replacement of the sort of spiderweb thing. Is that going to be a 1-for-1 replacement? It's not going to lose a spiderweb and it's going to get some swings. It's going to be, okay, cool. So anyway, it was mainly around the waiting IMDs and how some parks seem to get, I think Chesney Fields, which I don't know, but I assume you guys do. Westfield. I know it's in Westfield. Again, that gets a couple of bites. I think that gets 2.
You could multiply things by different percentages all the time. So I don't really know how to respond. Beside, I've taken I think it's a pragmatic ranking based on the feedback so far. It's like, this is the most important thing, this is the next important thing, this is the next important thing. if we reduced everything by like take 0.5% off, probably it might shuffle the order slightly, but it wouldn't change the result probably.
Yeah.
I mean, we were obviously if anyone's got a big screen, but Annex 2 details, 60 odd, 70 odd sites across the city. Unfortunately, or fortunately, some of the outer ring ones, those have low IMD and also things in good condition that the council has. There's money lower down. There's a parallel. Also, just to say, there's a parallel program investment with this of things that are Section 106 site ring fenced, and on Annex 2 it refers to money being spent in Rawcliffe. So it's not complete city centre because that is a site specific or area specific Section 106 money that needs to be spent in that locality. Yeah, this is the more use of the discretionary fund and a methodology to allocate it.
Councillor Manager, as a supplementary or a new question, I'll come back to you. Councillor Fenton, please, as supplementary in there.
Thank you. I suppose one for Councillor Kent. I think I agree with Councillor Healy in terms of it. It's really clear how the outputs are set out, and they are the logical conclusion of the of the weighting, which I agree with. In terms of the identified areas where the need is greatest and the investment is clearly needed. The report mentions working with councillors to sort of shape the schemes as they go forward. Has there been engagement with ward councillors in the lead up to this list being created in terms of getting an understanding of the need across the ward in terms of potential other open spaces in addition to the formal play areas? I just wonder to what extent you sort of discuss with ward councillors what investment might look like and how it might be targeted.
So I think Dave may want to answer it, but I just because you directed it at me, I very definitely haven't engaged with ward councillors until this has gone through its final process, if you like, because I didn't want to prejudge any of the decisions being made. From here on in, I think once the project manager is in place, they and Dave will liaise with ward councillors whether any work is being done to get that one local consultation and to their feedback on it. In terms of identifying other spaces in the ward, the difficulty with that is that they've already been probably eliminated, and Dave will correct me if I've got this wrong, because of the focus was on play equipment. It was on IMD, age of infrastructure, age of play equipment, but play equipment was the thing. So there may be other spaces in the ward which don't have any play equipment, which we would all love to put play equipment in or improve in other ways, but we'll need another £1 million to do all those as well. So it was where there's existing play equipment, the focus was. There's also obviously the problem with, much to my regret, because I really wanted to do this and pushed very hard to do this, to expand our play equipment across the city, is that brings with it an ongoing revenue cost in terms of maintenance, which is outside the scope of a capital investment programme. So you're kind of slightly constrained by that. But I'll let Dave answer if I haven't covered what you're asking.
Yeah, the list is based around our play areas, but not exclusively. And then, as has been pointed out, some sites have more than a play area. So I've spent several days cycling and driving around our sites, checking on general condition. So a lot of it is my knowledge of our estate. It was never meant to be a encyclopedic list of all our estate. One scheme that I was not aware of at all, which is on the recommended list, was the condition of the approaches into Bachelor Hill. Because I knew I was going to Cornlands Road play area, because I knew that had a poor access, because that at the time when that was refurbished, there wasn't the money for footpaths. So we have a number of quite incorrect arrangements where you've got a play area that you've got to push your buggy across the grass. And I'll come to that in a minute. And so that came on the list because of site visits, and it's not a play area, but it's an existing asset that we have that we need to do something about. Lost my train of thought now. Yeah, so say Bachelor Hill came about because of going to Cornlands Road play area. I just come back on King George V playing field, Aaron Place, Doddy Park, Fossway. I'm more than happy to revisit the scores on that site. I'm more than happy to split the site into two components. So you've got the play area and you've got the general space. I don't have a problem with that at all. The existing arrangements are a direct result of working with the Dosworth Avenue Residents Association to get what that local community wanted at that particular time that we had the money to afford. So the play equipment was chosen with them. The football pitch was put in. The rugby and football pitch was levelled and put in at the direct request of a local resident who lived on Aaron Place. So what you see there is a response to the community at that moment in time. Now, if the community is saying obviously things need to be refined and changed, that's fine. We'll do that, and I can look at that. But what was there was not done to the community; it was done with the community.
Thanks. Councillor Whitcroft, yours supplementary on this.
No, new question.
Sorry, I'll come to you after. Sorry, Councillor Myers, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report and the work that you put into it. I've just got a question on delivery and what you plan should this go through executive, what your plan is going forward to deliver, and I guess in what order or how you're going to start that process. I've spoken to you about it before, so I've got some idea, but I just thought it might be worth raising it now.
For the executive, I intend to answer that more fully. We haven't, the 19 schemes that are recommended for investment, I'd like to come back to the next 5 that are recommended for further investigation, are some of which have been around a long time, too long, but this is an opportunity to refine and improve them. Some are ready to go now, subject to approval. Some are quite simple because they don't require consultation. I can go and buy some fencing for Hall Road Park. It doesn't require, detailed community input. So some schemes will come forward, I'm hoping, almost in the next 3 months, to go out to tender. I mentioned Glen Gardens. I've just tendering work in Glen Gardens. So the documentation is there to just cut and paste a new site into it, because in your instance, obviously, there's been a lot of consultation over a number of years that we have are ready to go. So I'm not hopeful. I'm intending and will issue contracts for some of this work this side, within November, end of October. Some of it will follow as more seasonal things like I mentioned Roundtree Park. Others I need to talk to the community. I need to talk to you. Well, the project officer does. Chesney's Field is a good example. Chesney's Field Senior needs new safety surfacing. The type that went in when it was built through Playbuilder has not survived. We need to change it. It's something our insurance company are flagged up. The rebuild of the junior play area, we had no dialogue with anybody about at all. So this is like a new thing to the community. So it will come in phases, and it will come quickly, I hope.
Yeah, just to add to thanks, Chair. Just to add to what they were saying there as well. Obviously, we spoke about the project officer. That's an absolute dedicated resource to this. That's going to be their sole focus, with the support of Dave and myself and other officers around them if need be. And where we can, we will run multiple tenders, multiple procurements, and if that means that we can work and group certain things into certain tenders, etc., and run them alongside each other, we want to avoid doing one at a time. As Dave touched on earlier, we're confident that we can deliver this in the timescale that we've been given. We do appreciate it will be tight, and we want to, but we're fully committed to doing that, and we're confident that we can do it.
Thanks. Happy. Yeah, Councillor Whitcroft, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just hopefully a quick one about the accessibility requirements. There's no qualities impact assessment at the moment. I'm guessing that will come later down the line. Just want to understand the role that accessibility is going to play in how this money is invested, and whether there was any weighting when it comes to, for example, Green Flag Award. I know from a lot of the feedback we got at our Cemetery Road session, people were concerned about making sure we had accessible play equipment. So if you just outline that a little bit and let us know when the qualities impact assessment will be coming forward.
I mentioned earlier, David Smith, our excess officers, keep an eye on me already. We're in good dialogue. The majority, but not all these schemes require access check. Yeah, we've got things as footpath in, but I need to make sure I put a footpath in the suitable width. So there'll be some very simple checks as opposed to some space specific playground equipment possibly. We've got the design guides, we've got David. So there's a commitment, there's a public commitment in here to work with groups and individuals and specialists on this. So it's going to be a scheme by scheme assessment as to how and when that input is required. In terms of the qualities impact assessment, I think we probably have to do that Friday for when, for the exec paper.
Yeah, please do come in.
Just very quickly to add, I don't know if the previous scrutiny we had with accessibility was raised as whether it should be a separate weighting, and the feedback was what it would be. It would feed through all the any selected scheme. It would be an inherent part of. I mean, it's a sort of slightly semantic difference, but that's that was what I think was discussed last time.
Okay, thanks. I saw a hand from you, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, super quick one. Related to the topic around play equipment, if ward funding is allocated to a scheme, is there a component of sort of maintenance built into it so that, okay, that's just that's fine. Shake of the head. Do you think that might be wise? Because otherwise, councillors are probably very keen on a nice shiny piece of equipment that then obviously just adds to your revenue maintenance burden.
If it's new and shiny, we've got very little maintenance burden for some time. So the council employs a playground inspector who goes around continuously inspecting and fine tuning and repairing. The growth in his workload is more new play areas rather than an extra piece of kit in equipment. So some developments, the play area will stay with the developer. Sometimes it comes with us. I don't think we're at a problem threshold yet. And most of our consumables are low value items like swing chains, replacements, a bit of vandalism or ASB, which will mess up a seat. And most equipment will last, but then becomes dated. Timber is an issue because timber was sort of the flavour 15 years ago, and it's not lasting. It was the aesthetic, the feel, as opposed to sort of steel equipment. So replacing the timber is more, but we've also learned lessons on that. It was the industry norm to place timber posts into the ground. Well, do they rot? Now all timber posts are on steel feet, so they don't rot.
Not a problem.
No, not in the scale. Not when we've got 50 play areas. If you wish to donate another, unit within another piece within 50 play areas, it's not,
Yeah, the numbers look quite small in terms of ward contributions, I think, on there. Okay, I haven't seen any other hands at the moment. Sorry, Trevor. Yeah, please do. Yeah, fine.
Yes, so thanks for answering my question on deliverability. I just wanted then, Chair, to just take the opportunity to welcome the report and the weighting. I totally agree with it. I think it's long overdue, and the principle behind the fund is to replace equipment in areas of high deprivation and dated equipment. So I do welcome the weighting. I think the last play areas fund, I think responding to this idea about city centre and then outside, the last play areas fund contains 23 out of the 29 were all in York outer wards. And so I think, a lot of improvements were missed at that point. And so by having a scoring system and it's in this type of detail, I think is really welcome from my perspective. And I guess I look forward to executive discussing it next week and hoping for these improvements in my community too are on the list, and they're really poor play areas. And what happens when you've got a play area as bad as the two that are listed here in my ward is that we've got high pockets of children being brought up in poverty in those particular really dense areas. And because the play equipment's either not safe and dated, the area gets taken over by antisocial behaviour, and we've really got to push back against that. And I think this absolutely will, because families will have confidence that the play area is safe and that their kids want to go there. So the sooner this can get rolled out, the better. So I want to make those comments, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for raising it. I think it's good to note as well, as you've kind of raised already, by the fact that there is a scoring, the fact that there's this document provided now. In the future, when we get back around, if this does happen again, there will be something to refer back to with the dates on and the scoring to then be able to reweight things that haven't been picked up at this time. So it gives a good point in time for future discussions. Councillor Vassie wanted to come in, then I'll move to...
Yeah, just respond to that, because that's an interesting point you make there, Councillor Myers. So way back in the early 2000s, my ward received funding for 2 play areas. It got it as a direct result of the then Labour government making money available for play areas. And I'm just wondering if some of the discrepancy that you're referring to, and maybe officers can give us some insight, were outer wards better able to apply for funding from that government scheme? Could it possibly have been down to the fact that they had parish councils who were able to mobilise and do that? And looking forward, are there ways in which we could see things working better? Because it's true, yes, that two of my villages did very well out of that. And I'm just wondering why that is and why other areas might have not been so successful.
Fortunately, I was here then. It had nothing to do with parish councils. The approach was to fill the council's local plan had aspirations for catchment areas, for play areas. So a lot, not all, but a significant amount of that funding went into filling gaps. It also took a age-based approach. So the play equipment at Neyburn was from like 1952 or something. So Neyburn was a recipient. It had a play area, but what was there was like very old. So it hit the age profile. The older children's play area at Chesney's and the older children's play area at Chesney's was there because that identified there was a gap in the provision. So there's a gap in provision of age range, age of equipment, and a geographical gap in provision. I'm desperately trying to remember where the geographical gaps were, but there were a number of sites that were brand new. Yeah, and Ashton must have had the old one. Ashton was a complementary because you got the existing younger person's play area, but this was for older age children. So it's like age of equipment, age of provision, and gaps in provision. With the correct things used. Now the reports are still on the paper because the reports are still on the system because I had to go back them to verify the data used in the spreadsheet. And I think that's useful because that spreadsheet, as soon as we rebuild the play area, that site will, if you like, lose points because it's ticked off, right, the reasons it scores so well. So that will actually move down the list and other things would move up the list if you wish to use this again in future.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's basically very interesting, and it's kind of there's waves basically over time. What load of areas get it time passes on. That's what seems to come across.
If we're all here in another 20 years, we'll be asked the same question again for the sites that weren't done this time. Okay, I'll put all that to close, but it's been a really good conversation. For me, I've heard lots of discussion. I don't think I've heard any strong views on any specific recommendations, and I'm not one for making recommendations for the sake of it. So unless anyone's got anything they want to mention at this point, then I'm happy to just, put out part of support. And thank you for coming and giving your time today and talking us through that. It's been really good. Right. Thank you. I think some of you will probably be sticking around for the next item. So we'll move into the next item, which is, I'll just pull up the correct title for it.
Household waste.
Yeah, household
Operation.
Yeah, household waste. Recycling centre operations. When you're ready, if you just want to do the same again and just talk us through the report, and we'll move on. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So a summary of the household waste recycling centre HWRC options or future operating. There's significant traffic build-up around Hazel Court and James Street, causing long queues, long delays to traffic flow in and out of the Hazel Court operating centre and depots and businesses alike around there, and obviously just general flow north and southbound of James Street. Over recent years, that has significantly increased. We can see that through some of the information that we've got contained in the report and the data. The operating centre at Hazel Court opened in 2006. Since then, there's been many businesses, which is absolutely welcomed to the city and welcome trade, but have opened up around the HWRC on the Hazel Court. So you'll know there's another site within the York boundary that we provide in terms of HWRC. We have to provide a minimum of one. We do provide two, the other one being up at Southwark, which is much quieter of the site. The two sites, sorry. Both sites are closed on a Wednesday. That's in line with North Yorkshire colleagues as well and their operating centres. Part of the consultation prior to submitting the report today, we've met with local business owners. I have received various contacts from local businesses in around Hazel Court and James Street who have views on the HWRC. We met with them in August, myself, Councillor Kent, and Dave Atkinson, to hear their struggles and views on what they think around the traffic and the queues and how that's impacting them and their businesses. So we're asking committee today to give some comments and feedback on the options we presented within the paper. One of which is divert commercial operators and visitors that currently go to Hazel Court HWRC to Southwark. So for context in that, we only accept commercial and trade waste at Hazel Court currently, which is an income generator for the council. Reason being is because of the weighbridge, so to know in terms of what the materials they're bringing in and weight. Implement a registration system that will restrict the use of the HWRC to York residents only. Implement a booking system, so whereby we will offer a range of booking slots per 20 minutes or half an hour. There's detail to work through there. That's within our gift to average out and even out the number of visits per day or during the hours of operating. And then the final one is as is and do nothing, along with the pressing concerns, however, of the commercial operators around Hazel Court and the trade that we have around there. There is pressing safety concerns for all road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicle users. There's many feeling that there's almost an accident waiting to happen with the long queues and delays, and behaviour of motorists a lot of the time being impatient, wanting to overtake the long queues to skip that, both in and out of Hazel Court and on James Street. So we're asking the committee to provide comment back on those options here today. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hook first.
Two questions to make up for not doing any for the last one. The first one is the registration system. I'm really concerned that you've got, say, an elderly lady whose grandson comes to visit her from Kent or somewhere and says, "Oh, Granny, look, you've got that stuff. I'll take it to the tip for you." And he'll obviously be using his car, and he's obviously not a York resident, but he's doing it for a York resident. And there's situations like that, or a student his parents come up and say, "Well, I'm going to take you home, but you can't want that. It won't fit in the car anyway. So could I just take it to the tip first?" You know, and things like that. What happens there? So that's my first question on the registration. And the other one is, I would love to hear what's happening about this free community skip days and how that would work.
So in terms of the vehicle registration, if it's somebody who's not got a vehicle registered in York, it's a valid point. It's something that we'd have to work through in terms of some kind of exception if we know that person is visiting a resident in York. I couldn't give you the answer to that exactly right now, but obviously that's something that we'd have to consider because we'd want to ensure it is accessible to our residents in York, where they're relying on that assistance through friends and family. That's something that we'd absolutely have to consider and ensure that we've got something in place to support. The community sort of skip days that we've mentioned in the report, I think initially that'd be something that we would look to try and do within communities during the transition period to the booking system, how that might support residents and that changeover. Whether that's something we can do longer term, that would put is something that we can look to do. That does impact on another service that would likely have to be involved or deliver that within environmental services and most likely other services across the council. So that'd be something that we'd have to look at if we could deliver in collaboration with them and what the impact that would be in terms of the cost of doing that. We would also likely have to engage other partners across the city to be able to deliver that, just due to the availability of what we have in terms of our council assets and fleets to deliver.
Thanks. I've got Councillor Whitcroft.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the report. Obviously, some options out there I think would work, but also the implementation would, I think, prove difficult in terms of the response. Just regarding option 3, which I think is the recommended one, the idea of having a booking system. Just to be clear, that wouldn't just be for residents. So if someone was dropping off something coming from out of town, dropping off someone for a relative or for a student, the booking registration system could be used by anyone, including people from outside of York. Just a question of clarity there first, if I may.
It could be either or. It could be open to anybody within the York residency and boundary, or we could leave it open to external to York residents. That'd be something that's a further consideration, really, in terms of what we're unsure at the minute is what the split is currently between the York residents visiting the HWRCs and what is the not York residents. That's something we're trying to gather now with the site operators. Not forcefully, but we are asking for people to provide information on where they have come from on that particular day. But to answer your question, it could work either way.
Yeah, definitely an option, because that would help overcome that problem whilst also potentially having the average out. And then just the benefits. I know it mentioned the site itself, and this is sort of a longer term plan, but is it still a potential solution? I think this has been talked about before. Hazel Court itself is a city centre site, quite an expensive one, I'm assuming, quite high commercial value. If we could potentially in the long run move it to a more sustainable location, one that would be more beneficial to be able to access by car, which you tend to need to do when doing this kind of thing, and potentially making a profit for the council at the same time, if we were able to sell Hazel Court at some point, is that in any way a possibility or something we could achieve, or do we need a city centre site really?
I think there's a view in terms of needing a city centre site, or certainly towards the east of the city. Absolutely, yes. It's a consideration longer term, but that is quite a while off in terms of finding a suitable site. It would probably make sense if anything was like that to be considered. Not to speak for other colleagues across the council, but if we were to look at the HWRC moving from Hazelcourt, it would probably make sense to look at a wider project as well that may or may not include the depot. So, because that may have benefits to our own operations in terms of efficiency. So it's absolutely, it's mentioned with the paper, but it is a longer term ambition. And finding a suitable site and land, you're right in terms of the value. I have no idea what that would be for Hazelcourt. But yeah, there would be a value of that site, and obviously it's quite an attractive location for, I would assume, developers.
Yeah, please do.
So just to follow, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention in terms of registering for York residents as opposed to non-York residents that North Yorkshire is taking a paper to its executive to suggest that only North Yorkshire residents should be able to use North Yorkshire tip sites. And so that is a conversation we're going to have in terms of what impact that might have if we whether a reciprocal arrangement between us would be useful, and that would be a future piece of sort of conversation. But in any event, there are ways you could do it. So some people use a hire car or some, there are all sorts of ways where you probably would just need to be able to capture the registration number, regardless of whether you're a resident or not. That might be something you can add on to, which I've talked to other local authorities about. But and the long-term ambition, I don't know if you remember when the first outline business plan for the Harewood Wind Green Energy Park mooted moving the depot and the household recycling out there at the same time, but that made the scope of the project too big, so it had to be hived off because it wasn't able to, with the funding that was given from net zero funding, it wasn't able to cover both of them. But that obviously is potentially, I don't know how it would work, but that's one of the sites that could be looked at. But because that's going to be long term, this is a pressing problem that needs solving now because of the health and safety consideration. So this, that's why this has to be addressed regardless of future sites.
Thanks. Just on this local tips for local people thing happening in North Yorkshire, do we have any ones, just supplementary, do we have any tips that North Yorkshire Council operate that are close enough to York that our residents would use them? Yes, so that will be it.
Yeah, sorry. So we know there's an historic piece of work that was done by North Yorkshire, and this is actually a discussion that I had. It's kind of unrelated to this. That our residents, York residents, do use the Tadcaster HWRC. So there are conversations that we're going to have ongoing with North Yorkshire colleagues.
Thanks. You're right. It's my hometown. All right. Yeah. Is that a supplementary you had, Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that I imagine if you're in Copmanthorpe or Bishopthorpe or just that side of the city, really, that it's probably a lot easier to go to Tadcaster than go into the city centre with all the traffic as well. And likewise, I imagine for a lot of people in North Yorkshire going to Towthorpe, it's probably quite easy just to hop over the border. So I just wondered if there'd been conversations about that and us sort of not excluding each other when it's probably better in terms of congestion for the city centre for them to go to Tadcaster.
Yeah, as I said, them conversations are ongoing. We meet with North Yorkshire colleagues regularly, and it'd be remiss of us if we want to reduce traffic as well, and we want to reduce travels miles across both authorities. So absolutely, them conversations are ongoing.
Is that supplementary? No. Sorry. Councillor Fenton, next.
Thank you. Just to add to what was said, I'd put car club cars into the mix as well, in terms of lots of people choose not to have a car because they don't need one, but there are occasions where they do, and they might take that to the tip. And again, if there's a rigid ANPR system, they might find themselves getting fined. So I think one of the things to consider. The report mentions Hazelcourt closes on Wednesday, in line with North Yorkshire Council. There's no mention of the earlier closing time. So during summer months, it was open till 7, now it's open till 6. So I suppose I would have expected to have seen an option, even if it was one that was quickly discounted, to reopen on Wednesday and revert to the previous operating hours. is that something that has been considered and has been ruled out because you don't think it would have it would have a material impact in terms of dealing with the sort of the peak traffic flows, which is what is causing the problems for businesses that they're understandably unhappy about. But I think so I just want clarity as to whether it's something you have considered, because it's not listed here as an option.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we have considered that. What we can see through the trends of the data is that the visits have increased on a trajectory over the past three or 4 years from the data that we've got and analysed, and that's been a steady increase. So reopening on a Wednesday would still, we don't feel that would solve the issue in terms of the number of visits going through and the traffic build-up. What we can see from the data as well is in terms of the hours visited, it is around them core business hours. We're a real peak in the last from the last sort of data set. We can really see between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. Where some of the visits are at its highest, and actually towards the end of the day, post kind of school run, the visits really drop off. So opening later is not when people tend to wanting to visit, even in the last couple of hours of the opening times now.
Yeah, Councillor Kent, you want to come in?
So just to add, I think it's also interesting to note that the actual volume of waste that's being in all waste streams that's being delivered at Hazel Court has gone down a percentage point in the over year on year for the last 2 years, but the number of visits has gone up. So more people are visiting, taking less waste overall, which is interesting. So it's almost a behaviour change that's happened, and possibly this is supposition. I've got no fact behind this, but the increase in businesses around the area, the Lidl opening on the other side, means maybe more people do a slightly sort of opportunistic, I'll go to the supermarket, take a little bit of waste. But what hasn't happened, so yes, whereas in Towthorpe, the amount of waste that's gone through has gone up by 8% 2 years ago and up by 5% last year. So there has been a displacement. Partly, I think that's around messaging, because to try and combat this issue early on, the waste team did start putting out messages about please go when it's, look up on your sort of heat maps in Google if you've got a smartphone, when is it less busy, don't go at peak times, these are the current peak times, use Towthorpe if you're that side of the city. That has worked, because there has been a shift in terms of waste, but it hasn't ironed out the peaks and the troughs. And so it's this, what we're needing to do is smooth the flow, because it's really an interesting pattern to see that there's more people taking less waste there, but with high volumes of congestion at key times.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for Councillor Fenton too on sorry, I think it was yourself who mentioned the fines through ANPR. We wouldn't fine through ANPR if they're not registered through and the number plate isn't recognised, it'd be a turn away. Just wanted to clarify there'd be no fining as such.
Thanks. So you have a supplementary on that?
Yeah, just the point about the sort of opportunistic visit. I mean, looking at the page 43, the data, in terms of tonnages, you're right, across a lot of categories, it's down. Hazel Court green waste was up 10% in 23-24, up 9% in 24-25. Are you seeing in that waste stream in particular again the more opportunistic visits to dispose of small quantities often?
I couldn't comment on that. I don't think I meant one particular waste stream. I meant overall. There are more visits, but for less waste overall, which is interesting. But I don't know if Ian has.
It will be impossible for me to say that it is green waste as an opportunity that they're seeing to get disposed of while they're visiting one of the other businesses or trades around Hazel Court or James Street.
Just further on to that, the report talks elsewhere about community skips. So this is not something that's new. Quite a few wards in the past have used ward funding for tidy up vans, where one of the caged vans would be a particular location on a particular date. People would bring mattresses, all kinds of things that would otherwise be difficult to get to the tip. Would you, if you roll out that approach, would you consider kind of green waste skips in addition to sort of general waste skips as part of the offer. Mindful of the data on page 43 about green waste volumes at Hazel Court.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of green waste, dedicated green waste as a community skip, that's something that we could consider, depending on obviously the demand. That might be tailored to certain areas or etc. But yeah, certainly. I mean, we'd obviously try to increase recycling as well through that as much as we possibly can. So we wouldn't want to mix waste materials or different streams if we could avoid that.
Thanks. Councillor Taylor, is there a supplementary? No, that's all right. You're the person after next, so thanks for being patient. Councillor Vassey, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start, first of all, by talking about the staff at Hazel Court. I've been there a lot over the years, and I think they're brilliant, and I want to make that statement. They are efficient. Yes, it's busy, it's sometimes long to get in, but once you get there, they're always helpful, they're always professional. They even help people actually move stuff if they're struggling. And I've got nothing but praise for them. And I'd like to kind of see if there are comparator figures, but my understanding is that the recycling rates at Hazel Court are high. I'd expect them to be high because they're always kind of helping people make sure they put stuff in the right skip. So that's my basic position. I've got nothing but praise for the team there. In terms of the options, I think implementing a registration system sounds like a nightmare to me for the various reasons that have been said. In terms of commercial visitors, it did occur to me to say, would it be an option to use Wednesday as a day just for commercial waste and to maybe offer a slight discount on that day as a way of maybe taking some of that pressure off and incentivizing commercial operators not to be mixing all the time with everyone else. And then lastly, on the booking system, yes, I think that sounds like the option of the options presented. It sounds like that would be one that would deal with these, as long as it works effectively, as we can all imagine. Otherwise, everyone will be up in arms and shouting.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, in terms of commercial waste, what we did see in terms of when we looked at who the visitors were, and we used our other systems in terms of invoicing and weighbridge data to identify who were the regular visitors in terms of commercial operators, and it's quite actually a low volume, and wasn't. I was surprised by it myself in terms of what the commercial waste and visits that are coming through. As I say, it does bring in an income for us, but it's quite a low volume. And also, I take your point in terms of a discounted rate on a Wednesday, but these commercial operators tend to visit 5-6 days a week anyway. I think it was around 5% is the total visits of the commercial operators according to the ANPR data and the other data that we've used. So it's something that we have considered in trying to weave in, not just in terms of Wednesdays or beginning of operating days, end of operating days, but it's not something we feel would cause a great deal of improvement.
If I can just respond, yeah, I thought it was 8%, but maybe you'll know it better than me. So, but I was thinking if North Yorkshire didn't follow suit, and if we earn money from commercial waste, maybe opening on a Wednesday might bring some people towards York and actually earn some revenue. But that was my thinking. But thank you for the answers.
Thanks. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is a sensible way forward for the most part. I just would like to ask if there will be an offline booking option for those residents who aren't digitally comfortable or literate, and whether that would be more helpful than going through the main switchboard, because this needs to sort of work in a semi-casual way, otherwise it will disenfranchise people. I know it's not there's detail to be worked out, but has much thought been given on that at the minute?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Taylor. So I've worked already. We've had conversations when we've been putting these options together with other colleagues across the council that we will provide an offline solution that would likely include or rely on the council's contact centre. We're also, though, going to be working with our accessibility officer in terms of what we can look at and ensure that we the HWRC, depending on the decision and the option chose, that whatever it is, it will remain accessible to all in terms of being able to access the HWRC. And just to clarify as well that the booking system is only being suggested for Hazel Court. So Towthorpe, in terms of that suggestion, Hazel Court will only be the booking system. Towthorpe would remain as a open to attend and not require any booking.
Got you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, if there is any scope to try and involve people in testing any online option, that would be cool. I'm sure there'd be willing volunteers. But yeah, good that it's been considered. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Whitcroft, supplementary.
Yeah, sorry, just on that last thing you said there, Ian, regarding Towthorpe. Obviously, that it's in the papers that we're just going to do this with Hazel Court. If it becomes the case that Towthorpe then gets increases in traffic and we see kind of the same problems emerging, is there any contingency there for that? Have we thought about what might happen if Towthorpe has non-bookable and Hazel Court? Will it perhaps just move the problem geographically?
Thanks, Councillor. That's something that we'll have to monitor, as we would also monitor. We're considering bringing this, or proposing, sorry, to introduce the booking system for 12 months at Hazel Court as a trial, and we'll monitor that through customer satisfaction and obviously traffic flow and the impacts on businesses and the safety. In terms of, it's definitely not the intention to try and move the problem. We would have to monitor that situation. Any system that we look to bring in will ensure that should we have to consider another option for Towthorpe, that we'll have that flexibility to do that. But the intention is definitely not to move the problem, and we will most definitely monitor both sites and the success really and the impact on Towthorpe.
Thanks. Councillor Baxter, please. Did you have your hand up before? Has it gone? All right. Thanks. Councillor Healy then.
So on the option 3, implement a booking system, how is the system going to ensure that you're a resident of York?
Yes, but sorry.
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry, Councillor Healy.
On the implementer, how are you going? Oh, has gone off. So on when you implement a booking system, how are you going to ensure it's restricted to residents of York? And for instance, I don't put in the details of my next door neighbour, or I just pick somewhere random, because there doesn't seem to be a way of,
I guess,
checking.
Yeah, so I guess that would come down to if we decide to implement the ANPR system alongside it to restrict it to York residents only. So the options is the booking system, if we decided to restrict to York residents only, would rely on the ANPR, for instance, of the vehicle that they've registered. Is that registered to York as well as the booking system? If it's a booking system, it could just be that, if we remain open, it wouldn't matter where they're registered, that they're from anyway, and they could book a slot to visit the HWRC. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. Can I just ask another supplementary on that? So coming back to the point that was made earlier, I use the city car quite a lot. So you'd have to register all of those, which is fine. They're all in York. I would guess nowadays a lot of cars aren't registered to an address in York. I'd suggest every single company car is probably not registered in York, possibly. Aviva, for instance, they're probably all registered in, I don't know, Perth, for the sake of argument. It looks quite simple, but I think it's going to get quite complicated quite quickly.
I agree. I think, but what's being put forward here is a booking system straight, not, I mean, you could do both. And it might be that conversations as they progress, and depending on what happens with North Yorkshire, you have to do both, or you don't, or we have a reciprocal. But this is just suggesting that you have a booking system full stop. So you just have to iron out the peaks and troughs regardless of where you're from. If you wanted to add on and add a restriction to York City residents only, you could either do it by ANPR, or again, you've got to have then facilities for people who use a hire car, who just put in the number plate, or car clubs or other alternatives. And so it might be, other authorities have done things where it's not foolproof. People could cheat, but you have to show your council tax bill when something like that, something like when you visit an ancient monument somewhere when you're sort of abroad, and you have to show a sort of something with your address on it. I don't know. That's a poor example, but that hasn't been worked through. I mean, Ian and Dave will have better comments on it, but I don't think at the moment when that's not thought to be the key way of ironing out the peaks and troughs. But the booking system probably is more likely to do that, which is why it's a recommended recommended option. Sorry.
Sorry, just to add, I mean, we did work the booking system in COVID, during COVID as well. So it's not completely new to us or the contact centre in terms of reassurance of what their history of and experiences of using that. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we probably have to go and take away and look at actually what is the most robust mechanism for if we went down that route that it is restricted to York residents, what that would mean. I couldn't answer right now how clever the system is in terms of the booking part of it. If it could do that, I would have thought it would need some link up with ANPR. I take your point around vehicles registered as business cars, but that's something that we could take away and speak to other authorities about, or market leaders in terms of booking systems, what their take is on that and what their experience is.
Okay, so the primary concern here is flattening out the demand curve. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just a couple of quick ones from myself. I think the regular booking system like COVID, I think some people I've spoken to, residents, would actually, I think, quite like the system anyway, because they had the security of knowing they'd be able to turn up and there wasn't the delays. I mean, the issues that you see on a Saturday, which are prime business hours for those ones next door, I wasn't surprised that there's complaints from them next door, because it is challenging around Saturdays when they come. So I think the open booking system is the right one. I guess for me, it was just kind of reassurance around how we implement it, because it is quite a big change to go back to it and there'll be a lot of uncertainty. So is there going to be a lead-in time where people are notified, and what does that look like in terms of how much time we give? And are we also just taking lessons from other councils who probably do run booking systems, or from our own staff who were involved during COVID originally, I guess, and they've already been through the process once, and what the best way is to run it? I mean, I was even thinking things, as much way we can promote it as possible, as even that thing of, when you've got Google Maps, like a restaurant, can you just click book now? When you search it on Google Maps, is that option going to come up? Because it'll just be as much ways to remind people that they need to book as possible so they don't turn up. But at least we do have for if people desperately need to go that day, they can be redirected. So there's lots of wiggle room. But yeah, any thoughts on that transition period would be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. So following executive and the decision on the preferred option, we'll engage the team in terms of what that will look like in terms of a project delivery timeline. The winter period is generally quieter at HWRCs, so I'd like to think we can do that before implement the booking system in the lead up to the spring of next year. And obviously, absolutely, we'll work with residents, make sure there's plenty of comms and communications that go out. In terms of learning lessons, we've already done that. The team have been brilliant in attending and sort of seminars by market leaders in terms of booking systems, who have had other local authorities at them conferences and seminars speaking about the success of their booking systems, and how sometimes they were negatively viewed in the first instance, and actually how the perceptions turn around as the booking systems of people have got used to them and starting using them. In terms of Google and clicking on that and a quick, I want to visit now, I don't know, but maybe one day we'll get there in terms of that.
Thanks, that's good to hear. I haven't got anyone else on the list at the moment waiting to ask questions. I can't see any. Does anyone have any specific recommendations that they'd like to put forward about the report? I mean, I get the sense from the room that the recommendations being proposed at the moment is the one that most people seem to be in agreement with, but does anyone have anything else they wish to add to that in terms of how it's delivered? Councillor Fenton.
Yeah, I think and Ian has said there's some more sort of thinking through to do in terms of how either on our own or in conjunction with North Yorkshire, we manage that sort of resident only aspect to it. But yeah, I have memories of the booking system that came in after COVID, and I think once it was up and running and some sort of teething troubles being ironed out, it worked relatively well. So I think we've got that sort of experience to fall back on. So yeah, given the understandable concerns in local businesses, I think it makes sense to go down that route.
Yeah. I think that's a good one to note in terms of North Yorkshire Council and what knock-on impact that is. And I think, any dialogue, because obviously I imagine they have issues all over them, being a massive county, and whether we can come to an agreement in York specifically would be good. Okay. Thanks again for your time. It's been really good to work through that. And we'll just move on to the next item, which is the work plan. It's laid out there. I mean, I think the main thing to say is at the moment we're still looking for a task and finish group. We kind of said that there was capacity to do one task and finish group per committee initially. I know Councillor Lee, you had an idea one, but we haven't had anything formal come through from anyone. So I guess at this time, I don't know if anyone wants to raise anything yet, but we're seeking people to come forward with a formal proposal. If anyone's got any ideas, happy to have a conversation separately and support that being drafted, I guess is the main thing to say there. But I'd like to see one ideally by the next committee being proposed. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to raise on the work plan item? So, Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of, there's a briefing on the 21st of October. Obviously, we're moving to a new way of working in Scrutiny where we have public meetings and then we have informal briefings that are for all sort of backbench members. So I was a bit surprised to see this on here, given that this is obviously a sort of an extra, and it's not captured by the dates that have been set for the informal briefing session. So I just wondered if we could either badge this as a briefing session which all members can attend. I was just a bit taken by
it's well raised because this did come up in the scrutiny group the other day, didn't it, in terms of working arrangements, and the idea was to move it to be part of that. So I think we can pick that up outside because it would be the intention that everyone could input. So we'll take that away. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question. The Dial and Ride update penciled in for November. I mean, you might not know yourself. I often found myself in that position when I was a chair, but is that an aspiration that item will come, or is it a definite that we're going to get an update in November?
Yeah, well, it's been discussed and it's been there. So at the moment, that is the intention, but we will go away and make sure that there is something to be delivered. Because obviously, I mean, it has been an aspiration of the group for some time to have an update on this one. So I can understand the kind of trepidation about whether that's going to arrive. But as it stands, but I'll make it a priority that we get confirmation that is coming for that one.
Thank you. Cheers.
That point, have we had any feedback at all from the executive on why they haven't taken it as an item?
In terms of an executive item to move forward, or?
Yeah, because normally that's what happens, isn't it? The task and finish group goes to executive considers it, comes up with an action plan or not. I believe that step hasn't happened and it's been like a year.
Yeah, we haven't had, I have no feedback on that. So again, we'll take that as something to take away from this. Councillor Vassey, did you have a hand there as well?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just looking forwards at the work plan and looking at task and finish groups and welcoming the fact that we've now got a scrutiny officer. I'd very much like us to progress looking at how other local authorities pursue commercial activities to earn revenue. And I say that because over the summer I was looking at this. I know we've all of us looked at it in different ways at different times, but I was told that we earn, I think, £13 million a year from commercial activities here in York. And I found that Kent County Council earns about 600 million a year from commercial activities. From using departments, whether it's their MOT specialists or their parks people or whatever, to then offer commercial services to businesses. And I would like to think we'd all agree it would be hugely helpful if this local authority could be generating more revenue. And I think Scrutiny has a great part to play in helping us understand how other local authorities do it, what the opportunities are, what the pratfalls are, but to get our heads around it so that we can see a different future going forwards. So I'd like to propose that we make, I'm happy to hear what everyone thinks, make use of our new scrutiny officer to consider producing a report that we can all look at and discuss and maybe bring outside people in to discuss it with us to raise the level of understanding of these things.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if you want to come in, but I mean, it's something that come across lots of councils doing in work life as well. Lots of them been successful. I mean, lots of them have gone very badly as well and lost money, but it's definitely a worthwhile thing to explore. So yeah, thoroughly support it. I think it's a good question of how we kickstart that process, whether it's a report draft there, whether it goes to and then that goes to a briefing session, but it's definitely something we can put on the list. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to jump in, I wonder if that's something that members might be interested in doing some task and finish work on, potentially.
I'd certainly be interested in participating and also remembering what the speaker said at the beginning about our commercial portfolio. That's also part of the same thing, broadly speaking. So yes, potentially I'd be happy.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, okay, let's take that away. I think it'd be good to understand. The thing for me is understanding who is the kind of lead officer involved in this kind of thing as well at the council, because it is, in some ways, a lot of it started off as a council provides a service, it grows, it's like a procurement framework, and then it grows to become such a big thing on its own, it ends up spinning off into its own activity. Whereas if we're trying to come up with an idea of how we can spread it out, who's the director or person responsible for it, but it's definitely something good to explore. So let's look at it in terms of how it works. Got the Councillor Fenton.
Yeah, just coming back on the briefing on the library needs assessment consultation, is the plan that there would then be a formal paper coming to a public meeting of scrutiny prior to, I don't know what the kind of milestones are in terms of reaching a point where there'll be actions arising from that report. I've just wondered, is this our one and only opportunity, or will there be others?
It's a good thing to ask. So my understanding of this is that this is the early engagement feedback. Essentially, they've gone out and done some engagement. We'll be getting told what that consultation feedback is at this stage, but there won't be any formal decisions in terms of direction for us to scrutinise for an exec paper. So that'll be at a later stage. But it is worth clarifying when that is so that we can fit it into the work plan, because at some stage there will be a formal report with recommendations. So it'll be good if we can put that into the work plan itself. And we'll give you an indication next time of when that's going to be off the back of that.
And just on November, so at the moment we've got Darling Ride, which I'm very pleased to see, and look forward to seeing what the report says. Depending on the the timing of the public consultation on the city centre sustainable travel corridor, if that consultation is ongoing at the time of the November meeting, there may be some merit in having a discussion about that. I'm thinking about the corporate scrutiny. We had a discussion on the anti-poverty strategy. At the same time, it was out for public consultation. It's not, obviously it's not, there's already been a paper on the sort of the outline of the proposal. This is a consultation on the detail, but without seeing what the consultation looks like, it's hard to know whether it would suit a discussion of scrutiny. But if we're looking for a kind of a live issue where we can have a meaningful conversation, that might be something to consider adding to the agenda.
Yeah, it's a good question, Richard, because what I see is that January's got quite a few items in there in the mix, because the issue is that transport was lacking capacity to do some of the bigger items, in particular transport, till after Christmas break. But where there is live issues that are undergoing, then there should be something there already to look at. So yeah, we can certainly take it away and ask the director and the exec member whether that can be brought forward, because it'd be a good issue to put on the agenda and have a look at in more detail. Sorry, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to caution there, Chair. I appreciate that, and I remember the anti-poverty strategy coming forward. I think it'd be perhaps in the new context of these committees, where we've got the briefings and then the meetings, might be better to wait for results of a consultation to come through. But then I agree, when it comes to the scheduling, if we've got Councillor Aurelius here for Dial and Ride, we may as well do something similar there as well. So I see both benefits. I just wanted to caution that.
Definitely depends on what stage it's at, essentially, doesn't it, at this point? May even be before. Okay, that's all very helpful feedback. There's no other business tonight, so I'll just draw the meeting to a close there and thank everyone for their time this evening.